when it was first reported that there was an issue with the safety of this new $400 million jet, Donald Trump then subpoenaed the New York Times reporters and sent the FBI round to their houses and to their parents' houses to get information. So it's a really sort of hot button issue for Trump right now.
Now, President Trump secretly switched aircraft on his way back from last month's NATO summit in Turkey after an Iranian threat was made against his life. Two senior US military officials say security services warned him against flying on the Air Force One jet that had just been donated to him by the Qataris as a precaution following a resumption of hostilities between Washington and Tehran. Let's talk to US correspondent Harriet Alexander. Good evening to you, Harriet.
Hi, Carole.
The exact story of this is a fascinating one, isn't it? Just describe what happened, because everyone saw the president doing that slightly performative walk up the steps of Air Force One. This was his new plane given to him by the Qataris, but he didn't stay there.
Yeah, it's a sort of baffling story, isn't it, Carole, that you file under sort of only in Trump's America. So what he did was this happened on July the 8th when he had been in Turkey for the NATO summit. He got on board the old Air Force One. And he said at the time that was because he was doing it for old time's sake. So he's on Air Force One with the reporters, with the normal people who travel with him. They remain on that old Air Force One, and he then gets inside an airport catering cart, you know, those big sort of those big blocks that they move all the meals around in. He gets inside one of those, and then he leaves that plane secretly. No one on board is aware of this, at least not publicly. Trump is then taken to a military aircraft, a C-32, which is parked nearby. Trump secretly gets on board of that military aircraft, and then the three planes take off from Turkey and fly to London, fly to England. So you have the new Qatari jet that no one is on board of, not many people. You have the old Air Force One that most people are on and that they believe Trump is on. And then you have the military plane that Trump is actually on. So they land at Mildenhall, the airbase in the UK. Trump is then taken from that military plane back onto the old Air Force One. And from then, he is publicly seen getting off that old Air Force One. And then they all get on board the new Qatari jet. So up until last night, Carole, nobody knew at all that Trump had not been on that old Air Force One with reporters. So it's caused quite the furore here.
Yeah, because what is quite extraordinary, not just really the idea of President Trump hiding in a catering truck, which is a fascinating scenario to imagine. But I mean, the US president is slightly different than here in the UK. You do often have a press pack that travels with the Prime Minister. But I mean, the White House press corps, I mean, they are always travelling with the president, and presumably some of them didn't even realise that he'd got off the plane.
Yeah, until last night, nobody realised this. This was not known at all publicly, that was the case. Previously, there have been decoys. That's something that is known to happen. But normally, the White House will clarify that after the event. They'll say, actually, this is what happened for safety reasons. So, for instance, after 9/11, George W. Bush, they were very careful about disclosing his whereabouts. Bill Clinton once landed in Pakistan on a plane that people did not think he was on. So it has happened before, but this is a really extraordinary level of subterfuge, really. And I think the reason that they've been so cautious, partially it's because of the threat from the Iranians, but also you've got this real issue with this Qatari jet that's been controversial right from the beginning. This $400 million plane that Trump took as a gift from the Qataris raised a lot of eyebrows. He's always insisted that this is perfectly safe, that it was a completely appropriate thing for him to take this plane. And so when it was reported that it wasn't safe, that's when he he was very, very prickly about that. And I think that's all part of this incredible subterfuge and sort of bizarre ruse that we've just uncovered.
And I guess the Secret Service do have to take these kind of threats seriously. I mean, there have been a number of threats on the president's life. Most of the most obvious ones that we know about, of course, have been from individuals in the United States. But given the state of global affairs, presumably they have to take these kind of threats pretty seriously.
I think they do. Yeah, I think they do. I mean, these threats are not uncommon, of course. I mean, you can only imagine the amount of threats that are made against the president of the United States, any president of the United States, all the time. I think that the situation in Turkey was so important because of the geographical proximity to Iran. So it's one thing for the Iranians to make sort of vague threats against Donald Trump or any president when that president is within the United States. But it's another entirely when they are flying through airspace that's pretty close to Iran. I mean, too close for comfort, really, for the Secret Service. The Secret Service, of course, would always say that their priority is protecting the president. They're not interested in transparency and in letting the press know and being fair at all times to the media. They just need to keep this person safe. And you can understand that. But at the same time, it's caused quite a lot of drama here because of the secrecy. And also, Carole, because when it was first reported that there was an issue with the safety of this new $400 million jet, Donald Trump then subpoenaed the New York Times reporters and sent the FBI round to their houses and to their parents' houses to get information. So it's a really sort of hot button issue for Trump right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And President Trump said that he was going to leave Turkey on the old version of Air Force One for old time's sake. And I mean, this after he'd got this luxurious new Boeing 747 donated by Qatar. And do we know if the president has since used this plane that was given to him by the Qataris?
Well, he used it on that day, on July the 8th, to fly from the UK back to the United States. But since then, no. I mean, they're having to do upgrades on it. And, you know, Trump saying it was for old time's sake. I mean, that's where I think part of the problem began, because it really seems now that it was lies heaped upon lies heaped upon lies. And it was all down to the ego of the president, who didn't want to admit that he had accepted this gift of the Qatari jet, that he had pushed for it to be readied before it was actually appropriate. And so, you know, they fitted this new Qatari plane out in record time to turn it into the new Air Force One, but it didn't have all of the features that the old Air Force One did. So that's sort of egg on the face of the president, and he didn't like it.
US correspondent Harriet Alexander, thanks so much for explaining the whole story to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Carole.